All right, today we're jumping into a really thought-provoking book, Philip J. Lee's Against the Protestant Gnostics. Now, the core idea here is pretty wild. Lee argues that a super old, kind of hidden influence is secretly shaping a lot of modern faith, and we're going to break down exactly what he's talking about. So the book kicks off with this huge question, and it's really the heart of our whole discussion today. Imagine this. What if a worldview from like 2,000 years ago, one that the early church actually declared a heresy, what if it never really went away? What if it just went into hiding? And now it's subtly coloring the way tons of us think about spirituality, about God, about everything. Well, according to Philip J. Lee, that's exactly what's happened. He says this ancient influence is absolutely alive and well, and he's got a name for it. Protestant Gnosticism. This is the big idea, the key phrase for our whole explainer. So let's figure out what on earth it actually means. Right. First things first. To even begin to get what Lee is talking about, we've got to ask the big question. What is Gnosticism anyway? You've probably heard the word thrown around, but for his argument to make any sense, we need to get super clear on what it is. Okay, so here's the deal with Gnosticism at its core. It's a worldview that basically says this physical world, trees, your body, everything you can touch, it's flawed. It's a prison. It's a mistake that we need to escape from. So how do you do that? How do you break out? Well, it's not through community or faith in some historical event. Nope. It's through gnosis. That's a Greek word for knowledge. But we're talking about a special, secret, individual knowledge. It's all about an inner journey of enlightenment to find that little divine spark inside you and free it from this broken material world. And this is where the main event is, really. Lee's entire argument hangs on this one crucial point. This Gnostic way of seeing things is in a head-to-head conflict with what he calls biblical faith. They are just two completely different, totally competing ways of looking at, well, everything. You can really see the clash right here. Look at this. On the Gnostic side, the world is a prison, and salvation is all about escape. Get me out of here. But then you look at the biblical view, and it's the total opposite. Creation is good. It's not a mistake. And salvation isn't about escaping from the world, it's about transforming things within the world. See the switch? The focus moves away from just the enlightened inner self to the bigger picture, the believing community. So you might be wondering, how does an ancient idea like this even sneak in? Well, Lee says it's clever. It doesn't announce itself, it just reinterprets things we already know. I mean, take this super famous line from Jesus. Everyone knows it, right? Seems simple enough. But here's the thing. Depending on the lens you're looking through, it can mean two radically different things. And boom, here it is. This is where you see those two worldviews collide. The Gnostic reading looks at that phrase and says, aha, it's all about me. It's a private inner journey of self-awareness. It's all happening inside my head and my heart. But Lee argues, hang on a second. He says the original meaning was much more about a shared communal reality, about people actively working together in the real world to make things better. Okay, so if these two views are so at odds, how in the world did Gnosticism get such a foothold inside Protestantism? That's the big question, right? Well, Lee says it wasn't some big dramatic takeover. No, it was much quieter, more like a slow, steady infiltration that happened over hundreds of years. Lee basically lays out this historical breadcrumb trail. He says you can see it starting way back in the 1500s. The Reformation put this huge, important emphasis on individual faith, which was crucial. But, he argues, it also unintentionally cracked open a door. Fast forward to the 1700s, the Enlightenment, and suddenly it's all about individual reason over the community's authority. Then, in the 1800s, Romanticism comes along and tells us that our own inner feelings, our personal experience, that's the ultimate truth. You see the pattern? Each step pulls the focus more and more inward, away from the group. So by the time you get to the 20th century with all its modern alienation, this idea of a private, spiritual escape from a really messy world, well, it starts to sound pretty good, doesn't it? All right, so some ancient philosophy made a comeback. Big deal, right? Why does any of this actually matter? Well, according to Lee, this is way more than just some dusty debate for theologians. He argues that this hidden Gnostic influence has real-world, seriously damaging side effects on how people live out their faith today. Lee really connects the dots here, showing how one thing leads to another. It's like a chain reaction. So, step one. If salvation is about having some special, secret knowledge, what happens? You get spiritual elitism. You get a split between the enlightened insiders and, everybody else. From there, it's a short jump to step two, spiritual narcissism. My inner self, my truth, my personal feelings about God, that becomes the highest authority. No one can question it. And the final logical step? If this world is just a garbage fire we're trying to escape, why would you bother trying to fix it? And that, he says, leads to a total disengagement from the tough stuff. Social issues, politics, even caring for the planet. And what's crazy is that this isn't even a new problem. Lee points right back to the Apostle Paul, who was apparently dealing with this exact same vibe in the early church. Paul straight up warns that this gnosis, this special knowledge, just makes people arrogant. It puffs up, as he puts it. But love? That's what actually builds things up. That's what brings a community together. So here's the bottom line, the real takeaway from all this. When these Gnostic ideas start to creep in, Lee says the whole definition of church changes. It stops being this unified body where people are actually connected and responsible for each other. Instead, it just becomes a room full of individuals. Everyone's on their own private spiritual quest, and they just happen to be sharing the same physical space for an hour a week. But listen, Lee isn't just here to point out the problems. He doesn't leave us hanging. The last part of his book is all about the solution. It's basically a call to action, a roadmap for how to get back to a more grounded, real-world faith. He actually has a name for it. He calls it degnosticizing Protestantism. I love that. It's about intentionally pushing back on all those tendencies we just talked about. So instead of trying to escape the world, you lean in and affirm it. You take care of it. Instead of making it all about me, you put the community back in the center. It means bringing back tangible rituals, grounding your faith in actual history, not just how you feel today, and focusing on God's grace instead of another self-help sermon. And the goal of all this? It's not to create some new, super spiritual club of people who get it. It's the exact opposite. Lee's pushing for a return to what he calls ordinary Christianity. Just a faith for regular people, lived out in the day-to-day grind, in our families, at our jobs, in our neighborhoods. Right here in this messy, complicated, but ultimately good material world. And all of this leaves us with one last, pretty challenging question to chew on. A book like this really forces you to kind of pop the hood on your own beliefs and take a look inside. It makes you ask yourself, how much of what I think is just normal faith is actually being shaped by these invisible, ancient ideas I never even knew were there? And that, I think, is a really powerful thought to leave you with. It's what makes this whole discussion so important.